Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this June 11th, 2015 day on our calendar, and I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com, and you can listen to my show every evening, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on FirstAmendmentRadio.com on this June 11th, 2015 day on our calendar. Now, is it our calendar? Well, it's my calendar because I created it. It's the Gregorian calendar, and my name is Gregory. But actually, the Gregorian calendar was first introduced by Pope Gregory the 13th, which is how the calendar got its name. The calendar has been implemented by several countries because the Julian calendar assumes a full year. That's before the Rome created the Julian calendar. And it assumed a full year was 365.25 days, whereas it is actually 11 minutes less. So the Julian calendar, many countries felt was a true year, so they made the change. Then, if you want to look into this, go on. There's a whole big story about why the Vatican did this. But they control your time, too. Everything. Your time, place, where you go, what you do, your mind, body, and soul, all controlled from Rome. And the funny thing about it is people like it. Most people do. You probably don't if you listen to my show, but we are a small minority. Did you realize that Greece used the Julian calendar all the way up to 1922? And Russia changed in 1918, and the reason they were so late is because they didn't like the Roman Catholic Pope. And you know why they didn't like him? Because they killed how many, Jesuit Father Joseph Stalin, working on behalf of the Vatican, slaughtered all these Russian Orthodox people, millions and millions and millions of them. Can't blame them for not wanting to use Gregory's calendar. Well, go look that up. I could spend a whole show on that. But today, I promised, to continue on this Flat Earth story and to do it for Thursday, Friday. And today what I wanted to do was talk about some controlled opposition people and controlled opposition in general. And no one knows better than me to talk about it because I deal in journalism and I've dealt with it all my life. And I've dealt with it in many different ways. First, I used to get angry at them and argue with them just like they want you to. And finally, at this particular juncture in my life, I have taken a different approach. And I hope it's an approach you think about. Because you can learn a lot from these guys. And there's no sense arguing with them. And the first question always comes to mind. And no matter what you're talking about, you're going to find them. You're going to find them in every kind of group that wants to get at some kind of truth, no matter where you are. Especially in America, because, we have a lot of time on our hands here. We're not starving yet. We're not spending all of our time gathering food yet. So we have time to think about all these things, and we create all these groups. Environmental groups, people who oppose vaccinations. Oh, God, I could go on and on. People who oppose chemtrails, people who oppose 9/11, people who want to get the truth about all these subjects. Oh, people who want to get the truth about Sandy Hook, Waco, all these things. People who want to get to the truth about the Vatican. People who want to get the truth about NASA. And guess what? In all of these groups, they spend money to pretend that they want to too, and then they kind of lead you or make you look like a jerk. That's really what they do. And how do you know who they are? Well, it's not a question of names, because once you name a name, then they get into a really argumentative match with you. So let's forget about names right now. And I'll get into a couple of them because they're so obvious that, you can just say, it's like, okay, we know Bill O'Reilly for Fox News is giving you a lot of BS. We know these guys, but then it gets a little bit more tricky on the internet because now the guys they put there are actually, saying these guys, Bill O'Reilly, are jerks. So they kind of get into these arguments. And that goes on even in the alternative media. Like John Stadtmiller for RBN and Alex Jones for, Genesis used to argue, but they were doing it as a show, Yeah. I know that because I worked right alongside them. That's just my take on it. They both don't like the Vatican. And I remember when I first started doing my Vatican shows, they had to hire that controlled opposition guy, Michael Collins Piper from the American Free Press, to put on an anti-Jewish show so that everybody could hate the Jews too. And then I remember doing a 9/11 conference with Eric Huffschmidt. If you go back to 9/11, he came out with this really technical book on all this stuff about 9/11. And we would, I remember doing a conference, and he was on the podium too with me. We'd go up and speak about it, somewhere in L.A. And I asked him, I said, what do you do? And he said he was a third grade teacher or something. So I read the book, and I said, how could this guy know all this stuff? It's incredible. But he was one of the first to come out. Then I find out he starts this website and starts attacking anybody who criticizes the Vatican, and he hates all the Jews. And he turns out to be married to Rupert Murdoch's daughter. We all know who Rupert Murdoch is, And a great story, probably few people don't remember because I'm older. You reach a certain age and there's a lot more younger people than you. That's how you know you're old. And my uncle told me one thing once. I said, Unc, how, and I was young. I was in my 30s, and he's my favorite uncle. And I'd say, how can you deal with this, age? And he looked at me and says, just don't look in the mirror. And he said, I still think I'm 22. Good advice. But anyway, we're so vain, we have to look at ourselves, don't we? I still think I'm pretty good looking, even though I'm getting up in years. And that's just the way I feel about myself. So there, go take it. I think I'm better looking. I'm in better shape than Alex Jones. How about that? Okay. Now, controlled. We know Alex Jones is, so let's use him. When I'm doing this flat Earth research stuff, I noticed that he had Buzz Aldrin on, Buzz Lightyear. But that was how they made Buzz Lightyear. Remember the caricature? Okay, so he's on there. They're talking about the moon. And, Alex believes we went to the moon, the Earth is round, and he believes we're going to Mars and all these things, and he's talking up Buzz Aldrin. And I said, isn't it interesting how these people just show their true colors when you really start researching the truth? And then you look back at all the other antics he did and what he does and where he came from. And so let's just use him. Who cares? He's making millions of dollars anyway now. And I love the progression of these people. They start out, on the internet. I remember we worked right side by side. Then they go their path. They hate they basically hate the mainstream media, criticize all that. Then they'll be hobnobbing with Charlie Sheen and the rest of the Hollywood group, bringing on the Rothschilds, and it's so obvious to me, but I deal with it. So I just wanted to make it obvious to you. So, do I dislike him? No, I wish him well. I know who his master is, and boy, I love he brings out a lot of information, and just like I have to listen to Bill O'Reilly on Fox News, I have to listen to him too because I got to know what these guys are doing. Now, you don't have to, but go ahead and do it. But I don't do it because I, going to believe hook, line, and sinker what they say. I do it to kind of filter out what's the truth and what's not. And that's what you should do. Now, the next question becomes, why should you believe Greg Anthony, me? I don't ever want you to believe what I say. I just want you to think about it and to use your common sense. And there's a lot of things that I've reported on in the past that turned out to be not the way it was, and I've tried to come back and say, hey, listen, you got to get stuff out there. Journalism is a thing where you'll move forward with the story, and there's a lot of times that you don't know certain facts until you start opening that door. So that's all we do. And the doors all lead to Rome, and that's usually a key. If they don't want to go to Rome, then something's up. And you can talk to all these politicians. I remember when Ron Paul first came out. He was even doing internet shows. Oh, yeah, Ron Paul, the great, he hated the mainstream. Oh, yeah, he's the truth seeker. And there's still people think today he was. But back in Texas, I think he came from Texas. They all start there for some reason. He was going on all these internet shows. Alex Jones and other people. Michael Collins, Piper, all the guys that were in the controlled opposition camp. But when I asked him to come on my show, and I had a more popular show than some of these guys, he wouldn't do it because he got the word that I was going to ask him some tough questions about the Vatican. And he can't talk against his master either. All roads lead to Rome. Trust me. And when we get into this flat earth story, you're going to see it's the same way there. But anyway, controlled opposition. They want to lead you. This is a real key. I'm going to give you a little hint. They want to lead you into revolt, to get angry, protest. They want to lead you against the supposed enemy so that the enemy can screw you over and put you in jail and say you don't love God and country and just twist it around. So don't fall for that. No sense anymore in going and protesting in Washington. There's no sense in voting. None of this stuff makes sense. That's what they want you to do. Don't do it. The best way to do it is to understand them instead of spending your time revolting. Spend your time understanding them. And that's more important. Now, there's another side. They want you to run away. Oh, depopulation. Okay, they're going to pare the population down. Everybody's going to die. It's just a question of time. So I don't even worry about that. The point is, don't run away and become a survivalist. I do not want to live in the wilderness by myself unless I got something to do there, like I'm studying the Alaskan bear or I'm studying the movements of, unless I got a real purpose or unless I want to go traversing, into the wilderness. I don't want to go out there and live like, because I'm not prepared for it. And they want you to just hide away, get rid of their opposition. So don't fall for that either. Now, if you like living alone, and I'm the same way. I grew up on a farm. I enjoy, and I said to many people that know me, I live in the mountains or I live on the ocean. It's very simple. Now, I choose that, but I don't hide. I like having coffee in the morning like I had when I was younger. I like going out with people, and I like doing a lot of different things. I like scuba diving. I want to communicate with the people in the world, as we should. But they want to isolate you, so don't fall for that. And, the best way to think about it is if they start arguing all the time and leading you into art, it's not the way it is. There's a way to discuss things logically, use your common sense, and these guys will show their true colors. And that's okay. That's their job. And we all have a job, don't we? Just a question of choice. Okay, so just a little bit... a few little pointers, because I have to deal with these idiots all the time. And I say idiots because they call me an idiot. So we have this kind of way of speaking. I'm not saying that you should think they are, but they call me one. So I say, okay, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? Anyway, the point I'm getting at is listen to everybody. Then use your common sense. And when we talk about this idea that we've been lied to by NASA about everything, not only the moon landing, not only all the... Oh, let me tell you what really bugs me. This is an interesting one. Every day I turn on something in the morning, like I turn the Weather Channel on. I want to find out the latest hurricane. I want to know where everything's I want to hear the weather. But they always turn it, here comes a picture from the International Space Station showing us this beautiful sunrise. Then they start going, well, is that a sunrise? It looks, and to me, I look at it, goes, that looks like a fake CGI computer-generated image. But they don't think so. Then I'm listening to a baseball game yesterday. Now, believe it or not, I enjoy baseball. Now, the reason I do, and I've explained this on shows before. Now, I know George Carlin does this whole thing about, makes it funny. I'm just going to do it straight and tell you why I like it. It's a peaceful game. Just keep your eye on the ball, though. Some lady at Fenway Park the other day got hit with a bat. And let me tell you something. You Major League ball players out there, start using ash bats again. Because these maple bats they use crack so much, somebody's going to get killed. One time, there's more bats being broken than I've ever seen in baseball, and the lady almost died over in Fenway Park, got hit by a bat. So when you go to a baseball game and you figure out where you're sitting, what's the possibility? Because I watch these games now, and in the old days when we went, we'd watch the game, really. And they have a mitt, the whole shot. Now everybody's playing with their iPhones and everything, not even looking. And, man, that ball come at you, and if it hits you in the head, you're dead. I mean, you got guys, it's amazing. People don't realize how dangerous it is. And it's amazing to me that more people don't get hurt. But anyway, when you go to a game, put your phones away. Watch the ball game. Keep your eye on the ball. And until they put nets up like they do in Japan, and I think they ought to, because people don't pay attention anymore. Anyway, I go and sit in the bleachers in the outfield. Safer there. I can see the home run coming. But anyway, baseball's enjoyable. So I'm listening to a ball game yesterday. And they're talking about a no-hitter. A guy just threw a no-hitter the other day in San Francisco, a guy named Heston, a rookie. And it was San Francisco's 17th no-hitter in their history, the Giants organization. And it's the 4th year in a row that they've had one. And baseball is crazy on statistics. I mean, that's another thing. It's interesting. They know everything. It's so fascinating to me. They know every ball and strike that Babe Ruth got back in the 20s, but we can't figure out what our Earth is all about, can we? No. Find that interesting. So, anyway, they say, did you realize that on June 6th in about guess what? Sandy Koufax threw his 4th no-hitter in a row. He had one every year. And then he goes, did you realize that on June 6th, also 1969, we sent our first man, Neil Armstrong, to the moon or something? And then I went, oh, God, here we go again. They just believe everything, ruin my baseball game. I just wish they'd stick to just reporting the game. But anyway, let's get to the Flat Earth Society. Now, I've been featuring this guy, Eric Dubay. And Eric Dubay is 32. He's in his early 30s, American, living in Thailand, where he teaches yoga and Wing Chun. Part-time, he says, while exposing the New World Order full-time. Good for you. And that's probably why he's in Thailand. So very few people have the time here to do it. Now, the Flat Earth Society, he says, is controlled opposition. Now, when you're out there, he knows what he's talking about in this area. That's why I put him on. He seems to be one of the most reliable. Now, that mixes, he says, truth with lies and satire to discredit genuine people who are trying to search out the true form of our Earth. A job they have been doing for a very long time. They were founded, he said, in 1970 by Leo Ferrari, a suspected Freemason and philosophy professor at St. Thomas University. Probably, so there he is, Catholic University. Probably Jesuit, who knows. Leo spent his life making a mockery of the legitimate subject of the flat earth. Now, that's exactly what Alex Jones did to me. He made a mockery of me because, did you know when you go to Genesis Radio, you have to sign an agreement that you can't criticize the other hosts? That's there to protect Alex. But he used to criticize me. I guess that was all right. Call me crazy. Didn't say it by name, but everybody knew who it was. Though he passed away, this is Leo Ferrari, in 2010, his Flat Earth Society still exists today online as a website forum, which, still true to form, purports several false flat earth arguments and treats the entire subject as a deadpan joke. That's how they operate. So we're learning a little bit of how they operate here. Now, in 1956, and this is going to be interesting because I did some research on this, not Samuel Shenton, but we're going to talk about this other group. A genuine true earther, true seeker, and flat earther researcher Samuel Shenton had started the International Flat Earth Research Society and was making quite an impact with his publications and interviews revealing the truth of the possibility of the earth being flat. Okay. Now, so the globalists attempted to ignore the threat posed by Shenton for over a decade before finally creating They're competing farcical controlled opposition, FES. See, he was making an impact. This is my story. This is something you have to know too. When you start making an impact, like this guy did, no matter what subject it is, whether it's in 9/11, whether you're Tony Alamo's ministry, reaching millions of people around the earth, you're going to be attacked, and they're going to come after you. So they do it, in this case, by creating another organization and spending a lot of money, by the way, to compete and create a controlled opposition to what you're doing. And they spent 45 years steering all flat earth inquiry into the realms of satire and sarcasm, and it goes on today. And to give you an idea how this works, you can use it in maybe in an area that you find you're obsessed with, like I have been obsessed the last couple of days with this subject. Consider the example of Leo Ferrari's pumpkin-sized rock he would always take during interviews and lectures, claiming he brought the stone back from the edge of the flat earth. He would say with a huge smirk on his face how his boat had fallen over the edge, but he was luckily saved by hanging on to this rock. Clearly, treating this flat earth theory as tongue-in-cheek discouraged people from even looking into the serious matters. That's what they do. They take Tony Alamo and they make you believe he's a cult member. Put him in jail for 175 years. Now, that's a drastic move because they do not want anybody to know that the Vatican is the Antichrist and a lot of the things he was saying back in the 80s. So they had to do something. Now, what they'll do with other people, they'll discredit them to the point where you won't believe them, so you don't look into the information. So they start making it a joke, and so you'll never start realizing that there might be some truth to this. And they spend Jesuitism. That's what it is. They've been doing this for years. That's why they get... how many shows have I done telling you how big of an organization they are, how crooked they are, and how, still people admire them. Amazing. And they will not look into their background. And if they do, they say, well, that happened in the 1500s. They've changed their ways. They have not changed their ways. They're the biggest assassins in the world. They control organizations from inside and out. In a sense, creating this guy from St. Thomas University to make you believe that the earth is round without ever thinking that you have common sense and look at the facts. So, listen to what this guy does. So that's the Flat Earth Society. It's still around today. Now, his entire shtick involved approaching the flat earth subject from every angle except the rational one and the one that we're going to discuss today. Or maybe tomorrow I'll put on some more stuff, but I want to get through this so you understand that there's a history here. And when you see this occur, when you see these people do this and you understand controlled opposition, you understand that it even gives more credibility to what we're talking about. Why would they spend the time and effort to do this if they weren't trying to hide something? Common sense, right? Why would they spend the time and effort to put Tony Alamo in jail for years and years and years and try to shut down his ministry if they weren't trying to hide what they really are? Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them. as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal on this June 11th, 2015 on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. And here's what I mean. When you start doing these stories about the flat earth and NASA, you're always going to get these scientific brains sending you stuff. And they, let me read you. I got a comment. I did a story called Satellites Are Purely Science Fiction. This guy sends me this. Would the statement satellites are purely science fiction, Greg, be an example of extrapolating? Why don't you just use a regular word? A bit too far? Why don't you just say, is an example maybe going a bit too far, but he's using that word extrapolating to let me know that he's brilliant. Well, you're not so brilliant when you hear this, because I'm going to comment on it without a firm grasp of the basics. So he's telling me I don't have a grasp of the basics. If heat is molecular activity and the molecular density of the thermosphere is sparse, approaching vacuum, the rate of transfer of energy may be the factor not accounted for. Now, what the hell does that mean? First of all, if it's a vacuum, it's going to suck every satellite right into it. So I don't even want to discuss it anymore. What does a vacuum cleaner do? It sucks everything in. So we got a vacuum cleaner up there with all these satellites in it, and we got to empty the darn bag out. Now, there's no satellites up there. I don't care what I'm extrapolating or whatever. This is what I mean. It's ridiculous. The thermosphere is hot. Basically, metals can't exist in that atmosphere. But they're going to figure out a way to, go up there and see how hot it is. Put your toesies right in the thermosphere and see if they survive or if you end up in a vacuum cleaner bag. Anyway, enough on that guy. Okay. Use your common sense. Don't hit me with all these intelligent words that mean nothing. All right, so Ferrari's there, hired by the Jesuits or Vatican from St. Thomas University to create this organization to discredit any firm rational looking at things like there are no satellites, there is no space station. NASA is taking $10 billion from you every year or more for the last God knows how many years, and they love it, and they don't want anybody into their pocketbook. And can you imagine if we filed a real lawsuit and if we had a real fair system and we had real judges and everything was real up and up? Well, they wouldn't exist if it was anyway. So if you try to file a lawsuit like I was talking about on one of my other shows, where's it going to go in this crazy system that we've created? But anyway, Ferrari's entire shtick involved approaching the flat earth subject from every angle except the rational and scientific one. For example, he published a series of articles including the global fallacy as a cause of racial prejudice, arguing that people in countries at the top of the globe felt superior to those at the bottom, when in fact there was no top or bottom to the world. So even if one assumed that the world was spherical, the top and the bottom have been arbitrarily selected, resulting in racial discrimination against those in the South. Yep, we're racial. Yep, just like they're discriminating in Alabama, in the South, my friends. Oh, yeah, they'll muck up any kind of thing just to get you to not use your common sense. Now, how can the globalists, they are hirelings and dupes, seriously came to believe that all men are created equal when they teach that some men are eternally fated to hang like bats from the bottom of a globe on which other men stand upright? The only solution to this problem is a flat earth. So instead of presenting measurements or experiments, instead of presenting any proofs of evidence, Ferrari and his group would often simply argue that the flat earth is serendipitous, satirical solution to social problems. Now, according to Eric Dubé, in a famous 1971 CBC interview, Ferrari was asked, "How do you explain the fact that the Earth appears round in the pictures taken from space by the astronauts?" Instead of answering and addressing the clear photo trickery involved that we discuss here, Ferrari simply replied, "No doubt you're familiar with Einstein's theory of curvature of space. So here we go. If space is curved, and modern physics is based on that assumption, the Earth from space would appear circular. It's a simple optical illusion. This basically convolutes everything. Pandering answer is really no answer at all and serves only to make the listener cock their head and raise an eyebrow. And then you're going to start, somebody please give me a rational explanation to the theory of relativity. It makes absolutely no sense." Around this time, Charles K. Johnson. Now, this is where we're going to find it. I did some research on Mr. Johnson. Now, around this time, Charles K. Johnson, another genuine flat earther, took over the IFERS, that's the International Flat Earth Research Society, from the recently deceased Shenton. Okay? He and his wife, Marjorie, along with being flat earthers, were also vegetarians and they were activists who campaigned for better treatment of our animal friends. Good for you. And when I said that, you should have saw my dog, Miss Moose, and Max, my other Max, my show dog. Max is a movie star, by the way. Yeah. He usually sleeps late in the morning. But they perked up their ears because they love when they hear good treatment for their animal friends. By the way, Max and Moose told me dogs are not man's best friend from their point of view. They do not like men, most people, because of the way they're treated. They're treated terribly. How come you can't take them into a restaurant sometimes? How come people, there's these apartment laws, you can't, that you go to, the apartments now, if the dog's under 30 pounds, you can't bring them in. What are they, trying to have tiny dogs? I think they shouldn't let people in that are overweight. Because I don't want to live on the first floor and have some guy on the second floor, some 800-pound American who eats 10 times at McDonald's every day to fall through I think they're a danger. Come right through the roof on top of my head and kill me. Now, what's wrong with a 60, 80-pound dog? You let 800-pound people in, but you don't let a dog over 30 pounds? Oh, and then you go to these boat marinas. There are many boat marinas in L.A. and San Diego. They do not allow pets. Oh, really? What about the seal that jumps on the, it's totally ridiculous to me. And somebody then will go, oh, as liability purposes. Well, listen, you know something? There's more apt that some guy's going to come out and shoot you with a gun than you're going to get bitten on your little toe by a doggy. Don't get me started on that subject. But anyway, in 1974, when Johnson heard of Ferrari's budding organization, he decided to contact him and wrote a cordial letter requesting further information about his society, to which Ferrari never replied. 2 years later, Johnson wrote another polite letter saying how he was delighted by the prospect of like-minded campaigners, and said how it was a very happy day when he learned of Ferrari's society. I feel sure at the core we can't be too far apart in aims, Johnson wrote. I do try to practice what I preach. So here we have one guy who's not the controlled opposition, Charles K. Johnson, lived in Lancaster, California. Okay, this is an area I know quite well. I used to sell RVs out there when I was in college or in law school, and know that area well, the Mojave Desert, everything. It looks pretty flat to me. I feel sure at the core that we're not too far apart, Johnson said. He said he could hardly wait to talk to Ferrari. After 6 months without a response, Johnson wrote one more time, explaining again his sole purpose, blah, blah, blah. So he requested a reply and a copy of Ferrari's magazine. In conclusion, Johnson signed, "Thanks from the bottom of my heart, in advance, but warned that Ferrari insisted on ignoring him once again, I will then know for sure you are some kind of enemy of the flat earth work." Eventually, Ferrari did reply this time, but not with a message or a magazine as requested. He simply enclosed an FVS paid application form. Johnson investigated Ferrari's organization and further found out that he was using the flat earth idea as a gimmick to entertain and promote the atheistic society. From then on, Johnson worked hard to expand the IFS. Okay. Now, let's move to Mr. Johnson. Okay? In a story written in 1980, it was called The Flat Out Truth, Earth Orbits, Moon Landings are Frauds, says Johnson, written by Mr. Robert Shadewald, and was reprinted from the Science Digest in July of 1980. Now, before I get into this, let me tell you how Mr. Johnson ended up in his little home in Lancaster. This is a postscript. After the 1980 article and all that stuff, he was trying to talk to the Flat Earth Society. Here's what happened to him. And I'll read the postscript as written by the author. Much has changed since I wrote that article in 1980 about Mr. Johnson, both in a world at large and in Charles Johnson's life. In late September 1995, the Johnsons' venerable high desert home caught fire. Johnson managed to pull his wife Marjorie out, by then a semi-invalid on supplemental oxygen, to safety, but everything else in the house was destroyed. Their personal possessions, the Flat Earth Society library and archives, the membership list, everything. Having no fire insurance, the Johnsons were unable to rebuild. A dilapidated old house trailer, bought as a storage shed, survived the fire, and they took refuge there. A few months later, Marjorie fell and broke her hip. She survived hip replacement surgery, but never recovered her strength. On May 16, 1996, she died. The Flat Earth Society, however, lives on. This was in 1995 or 6, doing business at Box 2533, Lancaster, California. Charles Johnson has immersed himself in rebuilding the membership roster, publication of the Flat Earth News, in hiatus since 1994. Will resume with the 1996 issue. But there's another postscript written by the author Bob Shadewald. Bob Shadewald, the author of this essay, died in March 2000 at age 57. And Charles Johnson died March 19, 2001 at age 76. For nearly 30 years, Charles fought the lonely and futile battle to restore the world to some kind of sanity. So that's how he ended up. Now, his house burns down and all the records. Give me a break. Who burned it down? Was there ever an investigation? Probably not. So they burn his house down. Don't you think that maybe he was onto something? Here's some of the things he was saying. The facts are simple, says Johnson. And this is before they killed him. Maybe they killed him too. Wouldn't doubt it. Says Charles K. Johnson, president of the International Flat Earth Research Society, the Earth is flat. As you stand in his front yard, it's hard to argue that point. From among the Joshua trees, the creosote bushes, the tumbleweeds surrounding his Southern California hillside home, you have a spectacular view of the Mojave Desert. It looks as flat as a pool table. And I can verify that. I used to go out to the Mojave Desert a lot. And there is no horizon that isn't flat. Nearly 20 miles to the west lies the small city of Lancaster. It's not so small anymore. You can see right over it, beyond Lancaster, 20 more miles as cue ball rolls. The Tehachapi Mountains rise up from the desert floor. Los Angeles is not too far south. Well, approximately, it's about 60 miles. Nearly, I used to drive it a lot. Near Lancaster, you see the Rockwell International Plant where the space shuttle was built. Interesting. To the north, how much money, a fake space shuttle is built there, and they spend all this money. To the north, beyond the next hill, lies Edwards Air Force Base, where the shuttle was tested. Oh, really? To do what? They test these things so that they can take them to Cape Canaveral or wherever in the ocean. Then they go up out of sight and then they fall in the water. And that's where your billions of dollars are going. Then they have a fake thing on how it's up there in space. There's also the shuttle will land when it returns from orbiting the Earth. At least that's what NASA says, standing for never a straight answer. Now, Mr. Johnson said bluntly, you can't orbit the flat Earth, says Mr. Johnson. The space shuttle is a joke. A very ludicrous joke. His soft voice carries conviction, for Charles Johnson is on the level. He believes that the main purpose of the space program is to prop up a dying myth, the myth that the Earth is a globe. Nobody knows anything about the true shape of the world, he said. The known inhabited world is flat. Just as a guess, I'd say that the dome of heaven is about 4,000 miles away, and the stars are about as far as the San Francisco is from Boston. As shown in a map published by Johnson, the known world is circular and as flat as a phonograph record. The North Pole is the center, he says, and at the outer edge lies the southern ice, reputed to be a wall 150 feet high. No one has ever crossed it, and it could be even higher, I may add. And therefore what lies beyond is unknown. Now, I might add, a lot of this stuff was done in 1980, but you're getting the gist using some common sense here. The sun and the moon in the Johnson version, and in many flat Earth versions, are only about 32 miles in diameter. They circle above the Earth in the vicinity of the equator, and their apparent rising and setting are tricks of perspective, like railroad tracks that appear to meet in the distance. The moon shines by its own light, and is not eclipsed by the Earth. Rather, the lunar eclipses are caused by an unseen dark body occasionally passing in front of the moon. We have a lot of different things going on here. Johnson beliefs are firmly grounded in the Bible. Many verses of the Old Testament imply that the Earth is not a round sphere, globe, but there's more to it than that. According to the New Testament, Jesus ascended up to heaven. And Johnson said this: the whole point of the Copernican theory is to get rid of Jesus by saying there's no one up and down, declares Johnson. The spinning ball thing just makes the whole Bible a big joke. And that's exactly what the Vatican would want to do, wouldn't it? Get them, you believe in them. They even named the telescope Lucifer over at Mount Graham in Arizona. Amazing. Not the Bible, but also Johnson's own common sense allowed him to see through the globe myth while he was still in grade school. He contends that sensible people all over the world, not just Bible believers, realize the Earth isn't what NASA tells us. Wherever you find people with a great reservoir of common sense, he says, they don't believe idiotic things such as a spinning globe. Reasonable, intelligent people have recognized that the Earth is flat and maybe an infinite plane. He pauses for a sip of coffee, his eyes sparkling with animation. At 56, back in 1980, Charles Johnson is a bearded, distinguished-looking man who drinks coffee seemingly by the gallon. He chain smokes, hand-rolling cigarettes so skillfully that they seem factory-made. Unlike the stereotypical prophet, he has a wry sense of humor and a booming laugh. Fond of play on words, he constantly pronounces Nicholas Copernicus' Latinized surname as Copernicus. Flat Earth Society's presidency descended upon Johnson in accord with the last wishes of its founder, Samuel Shenton, an Englishman who died in 1971. The society, which will round out a quarter century next year, is a spiritual inheritor of the Universal Zetetic Society, which flourished in England in the last century. Under Johnson's full presidency, the society's paid-up membership has grown from a few persons to a few hundred. I didn't realize there were that many people that had common sense left on this earth. I guess so. Membership is open to anyone who is regarded as sincerely seeking the truth. Now, I don't know. I think Eric Dubé's taken over this or started something similar, because after Johnson was either killed and his house burned down and all that stuff, I don't know what happened. I think I heard Dubé saying he's starting a group to basically oppose the controlled opposition. And this was in Lancaster, and so then he mentioned that anybody who writes him will get an answer. His wife also believes what Charles does based on facts. She assisted before she passed away in running the organization. They have also checked the surfaces of Lake Tahoe and the Salton Sea, Salt Lake in California near the Mexican border, without detecting any curvature. If you've ever been to the Salton Sea, if you haven't been, go there. It's a good example of a flat earth. Don't drink water, though. It's very salty. Their home is a half mile from the nearest neighbor. Friends drop by now and then, but their primary companions are a half a dozen dogs. I like him to begin with. Several cats, a flock of chickens, and a myriad of sparrows roosting in a Joshua tree just outside the door. And those Joshua trees, boy, I really love when I go up in that area and see them. Very beautiful to me. And the desert can be really beautiful, too, at certain times. No electric power. Line runs to the house for which water must be carried up the hill. Physical isolation is the ultimate in privacy. But another kind of isolation proves to be less desirable. We're two witnesses against the whole world, observes Johnson. We've chosen that path, but it isolates us from everyone. We're not complaining. It has to be. But it does kind of get to you sometimes. And I know what he means. And I think anybody that search for the truth in areas that go against the mainstream feel the same way about it. But that's just the way it is. But in spite of this loneliness and the frustrations, they press on. Johnson claims that most of the people who shaped our modern world were people who believed like him. And some of them didn't have it easy either. You weren't aware that these people have played an important part of history, the flat earthers. Well, conventional histories don't make that clear. But inasmuch as revisionist history is involved, Charles Johnson should be recognized as one of the leading practitioners. Moses, he says, was a flat earther. The Flat Earth Society was founded in 1492 when Moses led the children BC, 1492 BC, when Moses led the children of Israel out of Egypt and gave them the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai. And he goes on, and then he talks a little bit about Columbus and some of the myths there, and he says this. Johnson believes the ball business, though it goes back to the Greek philosophers who we've talked about in the past, really got rolling after the Protestant Reformation. It's the Church of England that taught the world is a ball, he argues. And, the Vatican was involved here too, playing both sides of the coin. I'm adding those words. George Washington, on the other hand, did you realize that he was a flat earther? He broke with England to get away from those superstitions. If Johnson is right, and I don't know about that, because I do a lot of research, and I know George was basically working for the Jesuits. Anyway, we'll leave that. Uncle Joe Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt laid the master plan to bring the new age under the United Nations. Johnson discloses with confidence the world ruling power was to be right here in this country. After the war, the world would be declared flat, and Roosevelt would be elected first president of the world. And really, they did that cryptically, because they declared it flat by their UN signia, which is a flat earth. And it's broken into 33 segments. Go look at that, and surrounded by fasciae. Interesting. When the UN Charter was drafted in San Francisco, they took the flat earth map as their symbol. Why declared the world flat, Johnson responds, that the prophesied condition for world government is that the sun shall no more go down. This could be fulfilled by admitting that sunrise and sunset are optical illusions. The UN did adopt for its official seal a world map, identical with the one on Johnson's office wall. So we talk about the flat earth map and a little bit about Johnson, and hopefully Mr. Dubé can, of course, continue this work, and let's see what we can find out. Remember, use your common sense. So enough with Charles Johnson, right? See how much time we got. Wow, we're over. Okay. See you tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.